Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and we shall begin with the first question, Pia.
Our first question today, Ajahn, is from the live stream from Burnt Rabbit. Dear Ajahn, can jhana be developed during mundane activities, or it has to be only through deep samadhi?
Let me clarify some of these terms for the general audience. Jhana is a general term for absorption on a single topic. And then in the Buddhist Eightfold Path, there's a little word in front of it, samma, S-A-M-M-A, which means right concentration. So it's not that nobody else can concentrate or absorb on a topic. We see it happening all the time. It's that it's on a specific, if it's in the Eightfold Path, it's the absorption and interest is on a single topic which is conducive to lead to the results of the Eightfold Path, liberation and wisdom. So not all subjects which you can be deeply absorbed in lead to liberation or wisdom. So when we get absorbed in mundane tasks, mundane topics and so forth, we may indeed be entering a type of jhana. The Buddha has a conversation with a man who is a musician, and he's describing the characteristics of this jhana, jhana, the deep absorbed meditation, found in the eighth factor of the Eightfold Path. And the man says, these characteristics, which, by the way, are applied and sustained attention to a single topic. This is the first jhana. Applied and sustained attention to a topic, accompanied by emotional joy and physical ease or physical happiness. And this term ekaggata, which means sustained focus or focus on a single task. Eka means one, and gata means point. So, and the man says, that's what happens to me in music. And the Buddha, he says, is this jhana? Or is this samadhi? So these two terms are interchangeable, jhana and samadhi. Mm-hmm. And the Buddha says, yes, it is. It is miccha samadhi, or the wrong samadhi. Why is it wrong? Is music wrong? Is there something wrong, immoral about music or something like that? No. It's just that it doesn't lead to the result that we're seeking on the Buddhist path. It gives you present happiness, intense sometimes. People can have a whole life centered around such things as music or art or literature, hobbies and so forth. They develop a whole life in which they experience exquisite joy and well-being. But it doesn't lead to the end which we're seeking. So that's the way to think about this. Lots of this very confused. It is a spiritually supernormal state, this entrance into jhana. But notice some of the topics that one can enter this jhana on, such as the breath. Just simply being absorbed and extremely joyful and experiencing joy and well-being, such as one might experience listening to music or something like that, with just the breath in the focus of attention. This is a totally different thing, which is, first of all, unusual. Humans don't usually do this, and it's to be able to do that is super normal. Normal people don't do that and can't do that. But if you train yourself, you are you can do things which are not normal. They're above normal. So you're getting an A or a B. You're not a C student anymore. You're a B or an A. This word supernormal should not be overblown. There are all kinds of people out there who are superior to the ordinary person in certain dimensions of their life. They're supernormal, above normal, you know. And the capacities in the spiritual realm are on a grade. Some people have an uncanny capacity for focused concentration, which is very blissful and rewarding, but also leads to a high clarity of mind, which can be then directed and harnessed to the solution to the problem. Notice, like, if you're doing mathematics, if a person learning mathematics can't sustain attention, they won't be able to solve the problem. So paying attention is not how you solve a math problem, but paying attention is necessary in order to complete the functions which do deliver the solution to the math problem. So this is the function of samadhi or jhana or concentration, is that it's a necessary capacity to be able to pay attention in order to solve a problem. And that problem is the primary issue of the conundrum, the problem of existence itself, which has inherent pain and difficulties in it. So that's the relationship of this samadhi, this concentration, to wisdom. It's necessary prerequisite to solve a problem. If you can't pay attention, you can't solve the problem. This is well known in ordinary education structures and everything. This is a common problem in the world now. People can't pay attention. By the way, some of the influences on this inability to sustain attention is exposure to entertainment and brief kind of overstimulus in the internet, where things that last more than 5 seconds are not sustained attention to. So notice movies and everything. If you look at movies, television programs from the 60s, the cameras will pan or stay on a subject for extended periods of times, minutes sometimes. And as time goes by, they start to introduce shorter shots. Now, typically, you would find it a little bit strange if they were to stay on a single shot for more than about 5 seconds. This is all, most people are not conscious of this, but this is just next time you watch a movie or a program, notice how many times the camera angle changes, the point of view of the camera, and you'll see that sometimes it's as little as 2 seconds on it. Obviously, it can't go below about 30, half a second. You can't follow it, but it's getting as close as possible, and this kind of generates excitement and interest because people can't sustain interest on single shot things like this. Notice, by the way, in this, we actually have 2 cameras, and the view of me will be changing from time to time. But we don't indulge too much in that. We expect that we hope that we actually require you to pay more sustained attention. Some of you will be flicking back and forth between other channels while you're watching this. Stop that. You stay on this one. You watch it without flicking back and forth to the other channels. Okay, next question.
Next question from the live stream is from No One Everyone in Iran. The fact that there are even brief descriptions of Nibbana necessitates the presence of a consciousness to experience it and report back. It is very difficult to distinguish parinibbana from total annihilation and vibhava tanha, as disbanding of the khandhas inhibits any further awareness. The Buddha rejects annihilation based on anatta, but nibbana is also anatta, yet it can be annihilated?
Okay, did everybody understand that perfectly well? If you're a well-informed Buddhist that have been thinking about this for some time, and you will have understood that perfectly well, and it was well formulated. But it's for many people watching that was just gibberish. It was not. It's not. You don't understand it. So I'm going to have to unpack some of those terms. Nibbana, I think everybody has heard of nirvana. So nirvana is some sort of ultimate spiritual achievement or state. People project onto it whatever they think. So at least that's a familiar term. Nibbana with N-I-B-B and nirvana, N-I-R-V-A-N-A, are the same terms. One is in Pali, nibbana, and the other one is in Sanskrit, nirvana. So then there's another term in there, anatta, which means the absence of an enduring self or an enduring, unchanging soul. And these are key terms and features of the Buddhist path and teaching. By the Buddhist path and teaching is called the Dhamma, or in Sanskrit, Dharma. Dharma and Dhamma. These are just two different variations on a very similar core type of language. Parinibbana is the term for final nibbana, the final nirvana, when a person who is enlightened, fully enlightened, dies. By the way, I see that occasionally I look at like Indian newspapers, and when they announce a funeral, they often use the term so-and-so's parinibbana, and that's usually a cremation, but the person is not enlightened or anything, but they use this term rather generally and casually as like the final passing of a person. But in the Buddhist context, it's a very specific term, and it is used for the death of the fully enlightened person. And then, of course, I think anybody who's a thinker asks, well, what happens then? Because it's said, well, this is the end of the round of rebirth. So intrinsic to and central to Buddhist teachings, the early Buddhist teachings, is the idea of a continuation. Both before this birth, there is a being that is in a continuous process of change, and that continuous stream of consciousness and embodied consciousness doesn't cease when the body drops away. The process that flows into the next life, which is each lifetime that we have and each sense of a person is not a thing that goes through time. You're not a person who goes through time. You're a process. There is a process which we just give a noun to. A noun means a name. So Bill or Bob or Jane. We just name a process, like we name a river, the Fraser River, the Mississippi River. But when we look for the real Mississippi, we don't find anything. It's just a flow of water. We give names or nouns to processes, which should actually be verbs. So conundrum, the difficult question, which has been argued from the time of the Buddha on, is like what's the difference between nirvana, nibbana, and pari-nibbana? What happens to the enlightened person when they die? So is there consciousness? I mean, is it annihilation, and so forth? So this is one of the great questions, which I will leave you dangling with, because I've never found an absolute, in terms of convincing to the ordinary person, especially to simply a logical person who is only referring to reason and logic. There isn't a satisfactory answer to the question of, is parinibbana annihilation, or is it some form of continuation? And this is very frustrating to people. Of course, the famous scenario in the Pali Canon is when a man comes to the Buddha and says, I have heard about this enlightened person. When they die, do they still exist, or do they not exist? Or is it some sort of thing of both? They both exist and not exist? Or they neither exist nor not exist? Every possibility. This is called the tetralemma, the logic, Indian logic at the time. Buddhist logic is often, there's 4 possibilities. Something exists, doesn't exist, both exists and not exists, and neither exists nor not exist. We may be a little confused by this, because in the West, there's a brilliant fellow named Aristotle who said there's only, his logic is based on the law of the excluded middle. There is only 2 choices: exist or not exist. There is no other option. There is no logical way to say both exists and not exists. That's quite brilliant, and it's very hard to argue against that. But in ordinary life, the ordinary logic that we use is actually this quadra option. We say, oh, you lost all your money in the stock market. Yeah. Well, how are you able to buy a cup of coffee? Well, I lost it all, but I still have, enough to buy a coffee. So it's both I lost it all, and I have a little bit left. It's kind of the ordinary way we deal with the world, and it seems to be satisfactory. The other option is that say that we talk about, is space infinite or is it finite? In other words, is the universe infinite or is it finite? And we usually don't ask, could it be both infinite and finite? It doesn't make sense, but unless you say, well, it's infinite in one direction and finite in the other. So it's infinite in its extension, but in its thickness, it's finite. So it's flat and goes into infinity, but its thickness is finite. So there you go. It's both finite and infinite. So this is to this day, logicians play with this. And I noticed, I think there's a modern Western logician, a historian, I believe, who got interested in this. He quite often Western educated people are just stay in the field of their inheritance from the Greeks. But if they encounter this Buddhist logic and so forth, they often think, well, wait a second, this is a really another level of the game. This is another dimension. And they become interested. And I've seen a few, professors, philosophy professors and so forth, who were raised and educated in the West and maybe taught in universities for years, that eventually encounter Buddhist ideas and start to process and integrate this. But yeah, it's not something that you can resolve just purely by logic. And as you see, you'll see very well known monks who have committed to either side of this question, that parinibbana is annihilation. But why is it, the Buddha himself says, he teaches neither annihilationism nor eternalism, but a middle path between these two. Is there a middle path between annihilation, nothing, and something? How would you possibly reconcile this? It is understandable if there is no substantial being to begin with, that to talk about the annihilation of a being is senseless if there is no being to begin with. So this is what's called anatta. We are saying that there is no atta, or self, or soul to begin with, in the sense that an atta is a thing which goes through time unchanged. There's a word that you'll sometimes come across when we try to talk about this, called a monad. So sort of like an atom that is indestructible, unchanging, and which constitutes something. So this is the idea of a soul, often in Catholic theology or Christian theology, is the soul is immortal and is not subject to decay or change or anything like that. So the Buddha breaks through this idea. He says that's impossible. Consciousness itself is a process. So if a soul was unchanging, indestructible, then it couldn't be conscious. So then people said, well, you mean, so when you die, this process just ceases? And he said, no, the process continues. So when in this parinibbana, this final resolution achieved by an enlightened person, is not annihilation, because there wasn't anything to annihilate. So that's the logical ones that commit to cessation, complete cessation. And others say, but there's indications by the Buddha that it's not simply utter cessation. It's just a unimaginable continuation, which is not conventionally described by our sense of life. They give there's a simile for that. So it's a tadpole. Okay, let me talk about frogs. They're born in the water and they're tadpoles. They immerse in the water. They're not amphibious yet. They live underwater. And they live just like a fish. They're able to extract oxygen out of the water. So this tadpole is swimming around, and eventually, as he grows, he and his friends, the fish, he's friendly with the fish. One day, he becomes amphibious. He becomes a frog, and the frog is able to live on land. And he jumps out of the water and disappears. And the fish, all they know is that he's disappeared. One day, then he jumps back in the water. He comes back, and the fish say, "Hey, we thought you were dead. You disappeared." And he says, "No, I was up on land." And the fish say, "Land? What do you mean by that?" Oh, he says, it's totally different than water. It's you can walk around on it. You're heavy, and there's air and all this kind of stuff up there, and they reject it. They say, you're fantasizing. There's no such place, because the fish have never seen such a place. So this is the kind of simile for this possibility of that parinibbana is something, but if we use our regular experience, then we can't grasp what is meant by that, because we have no experience of that. Nevertheless, the frog is correct. There is another dimension, which is the land-based dimension, which the water-based beings cannot conceive of because they have no experience of that. So I will not attempt to resolve these questions for you, because in history they have not been resolved, but you will probably find yourself inclined one direction or another with this.
Next question from the live stream is from WClickW in California. Does the Buddha love all beings or have equanimity towards all beings? Are the two necessarily in contradiction? How is equanimity different from indifference?
Yeah, he has both. He has both loving kindness and equanimity, and you too can have that, and you too should try to have that, because what is called there's loving kindness and compassion and so forth, but if it's not accompanied by equanimity, loving kindness can turn into personal preference, and compassion can turn into sympathetic grief. So you need this sense of the fact that, like a doctor should be, quite willing to help all his patients, all her patients, and commit to it, even though they perfectly well know the person's probably going to die in a few days or a couple of weeks, and of course, all of them are going to die eventually. And now, if the doctor starts to grieve and suffers as their patients don't get better, then they're going to deplete their resources, their inner resources in this, because inevitably everybody dies. So they have to remember that you do what you can out of concern and kindness to relieve pain and make things better, but that ultimately you die. Everybody dies. So you need to have these two attitudes, and they're not in contradiction at all to each other. And the doctor is not indifferent, so they don't, it's not that they don't care. They care with intelligence. They care wisely about things. They do what they can, but always that vision of the facts are that medicine is a limited possibility. It can't cure everything, and ultimately it always fails in the end. It can't cure death. So those two things are go together, and until we have that, we're not really wise, and we need to keep the warmth of the heart going as well, because we'll tend to be aloof and isolated. It's unsatisfactory not to have access to certain warmth emotions. So some people appear to be very distant and detached. They've found their way to a form of equanimity, but they lack the complementary emotion of loving kindness or compassion. So they're incomplete. There are times when you can be full of one or the other, or cultivate one or the other if you're lacking in one or the other. So that's the goal of Buddhist practice, is that how's your heart, and then how's your clarity. I have quite a lot of teachings about this called warm heart, cool head. And you can have both at the same time. Notice it's a good way to sleep, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. You have a big down comforter on you, keeping your body warm at night, but you don't put your head under the covers. You keep your head out of the covers. And it's good to have some fresh air and a cool temperature in the room so that your head is cool while your body is warm. And so this is the balance of these two emotions. Loving kindness is warm, it permeates your whole body, but you don't want it to just overheat your head. The head needs to be, your mind, your brains need to be kept cool. They don't do well in excessive heat. Your body enjoys that, and you can relax in that warmth. It's like a hot bath. Don't put your head under. Okay, next question.
Next question is from Anonymous in California, United States. I had watched your videos on how the wise see cancer several years ago before being recently diagnosed with a serious but treatable illness. While I approached the very slow diagnosis process with relative equanimity, I have been left with complications of treatment that require future medical intervention. When I talk to my doctors about this, they brush me off, saying, "Let's cross that bridge when we get there. You should be grateful that you weren't more sick." How can I communicate with the doctors to get the information I need to plan my future medical treatment when I keep encountering this reaction?
There is no sort of wisdom issue here. What you need to do is, if it's not satisfactory to you, is you seek out another doctor. There's an interesting strategy that some people have, is that they have two doctors, and they present their symptoms to both. Every time they have anything, they go to both doctors, and they don't tell the doctor what the other doctor said. They just go there to see what these two independent persons assess it as. So you should feel and be free to consult another doctor. It's called famously called a second opinion. Looks like you've had more than a second opinion or a third opinion, but sometimes you need the fourth opinion. If you're not getting satisfactory answers from people, then you look for another one. There's always the possibility that the problem is you, and that you are asking things out of desperation that can't be answered by doctors. So you'll have to assess that, do a self-assessment, say, am I being rational here? Am I asking something which can't be answered? And they've told me on several occasions, several qualified people have said, that's not the thing that you should be dealing with now. There's another thing you should be dealing with now, and we will get to that when it's appropriate. So you have to question yourself and the doctors as well. Yeah.
Next question is from Dinka in Belgrade. Where does memory reside?
Good question. It's very confusing to understand how we access information from the past if we don't have a hard drive. So people who are neurologists, brain people, they say, well, it's embedded in circuits in the brain, and we access them through, that's the hard drive, and then we have software. The so-called mind is software. But from a Buddhist point of view, it can't be that simple because we don't think that the brain or the pure material is the explanation of things. One of the reasons why is just direct evidence that memory of past lives are accessed, and so you arrive here with dragging information from the past. Of course, by the way, all geneticists and evolutionary biologists, etc., believe in past lives. Do you not know that? It's a scientific fact, right? They just believe that the mechanism is genetic transmission. It's through the sperm and egg. But you all of you who are listening, and all humans, all beings have memories theoretically going back to the beginning of the universe, and it's embodied in your genetic structure. When we look at development of embryos and so forth, they go through all of these stages, sort of kind of a fish stage and on and on, kind of a microcosmos of the evolutionary process. So if I ask people if they have past life memories, and people say, no, I have no past life memories. I say, you all have past life memories. How did you learn to speak? Because you had access to some sort of evolutionary process which makes speech possible. And that's a form of memory. Now, all of these processes, though, are continuously changing, and the brain itself is continuously changing. And you'll see in old age quite often memory fades, or under injuries, memory fades. Also, when we access memories, they're not the same memory. That's why we don't have an enduring identity that goes through time. Is that if you are 8 years old and you remember being 7, and it's interesting to talk to children, say, if they're 5 years, do you remember when you were 4? Remember your birthday when you were 4? And they usually nod and everything. And tell me a little bit about what it was like when you were 4. And then ask them again when they're 7. And they will have another perspective on it. The memory that they bring up of being 4 is now altered and completely reconfigured because of their further experience. So your memories are not a reliable report of who you are, because there is no you in the midst of this. There are a stream of memory process which is always being overlaid again and again and again with new experience. And so so as an adult, you go back and you have a whole different account of what you were experiencing as a child. You have a sense of history and context and maturity that you simply didn't have reference for as a child. So it's always being reprocessed. So memory is not about the past. It's actually a thing that is continuously present. When we remember the past, we remember the past in the present. When we imagine the future, we imagine the future in the present. Some people have a desire to be in the present more often. I got news for you. You can't ever be anywhere else. Your ideas that you are flitting into the past or the future all occur in the present, and so you can't get out of the present. People want to be in the present more often. Sorry, you're always in the present, remembering something. It's a good thing to recognize, too, because once you recognize that the past is just a thought process in the present, you can disempower the past, because people are actually convinced, like in trauma, they enter into the past as if they were there in the past. But once they recognize that you're not there in the past, you are remembering in the present. So this is how memory works. Now, where is memory? Where is it located in space and time? We would say that it's a naive idea that it's just in the brain, in a hard circuit in the brain. So there are other kinds of explanations that it's a field. It's actually, the memory is is more like environmental, that there's a continuation. And of course, this is pretty obvious that we're not an encapsulated thing separate from the world. We don't end at our skin, and then the world begins. This is why we have ecological problems. Is people think, if I throw this used oil into the river there, then it goes away from me. No, it goes back into your drinking water and comes back to you. So this is a naive mistake that you're an encapsulated, separate entity. You are not. You are continuous with the environment around you. And the slightest observation of this is that every time you take a breath, you breathe in the environment and then you breathe out into the environment. The water that sustains you, the liquids in your body, are continuously passing from within you to without you, and without you to within you. The stream of thoughts, information, and idea that comes through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are a continuous interaction with it's not even an interaction. There is no interaction between you and the world. There is a continuous, undifferentiated field, which is composed of the atmosphere, the earth, and the human body. And it's not a separate thing. The world is walking around. There's a nice phrase when we look at the history of like genetic history or the evolutionary history. We could compress it into: a wave rolled up on the beach, got up and walked away. That's what a human is. A wave, an ocean wave, rolled up on the beach, got up and walked away. A bit of seaweed for the container, coral for the bones, seaweed. Basically, your bloodstream is just ocean water. It's hardly. That's why you can get a saline solution drip. Like if you're in the hospital, they'll give you a little bit of seawater there. Keep the seawater thing up. So we are just that. We are just the environment. The earth is peopling. That's what it does. The universe is peopling. The person is no other than the universe. The universe is no other than the person. The world is not other than the person. The person is not other than the world. Walking around, looking at things. Looking at what things? Itself. You are looking at, when you look at the sky or the earth or the water, you're looking at yourself. Yeah. So that's to kind of disturb our too linear idea of where memory is stored. Yeah.
Next question is from Moria in California, United States. Can you please break down what is meant by, quote, mindfulness is more than bare awareness, unquote? Is this phrase a sort of refutation of the Mahasi type of noting techniques?
A refutation of Mahasi techniques? Yes, it is. We should not say that mindfulness is merely attention. In one sense, it is. Like the Burmese tradition is very influenced by what's called Abhidhamma. And Abhidhamma, each school of Buddhism develops its own Abhidhamma, more or less a commentary. And it is, some of the schools insist that it's the actual word of the Buddha, and they give mythological origins for it. But if we look at it through the hard, cold lens of history, it appears to be simply a development by monastics, and some of it is very brilliant. but they differ. They differ in their evaluation, so we would call it really commentarial. And those who are inclined to, extreme exercises in analysis, reductionism, and logic will be drawn to that particular practice. They can spend all day inquiring and investigating. And you see certain students, certain disciples of the Buddha are praised for their analytical capacities. Kachana, I think, was one. Sariputta is said foremost in wisdom. Sariputta is not particularly, he is analytical, but he is, his analysis is always in the context of the appropriate context. Sometimes analytical wisdom gets out of its appropriate context. So bara awareness itself, bare awareness itself is not what is meant by right mindfulness. Awareness itself is a servant of right mindfulness. It needs to be in the context of the full awareness of the Eightfold Path, and that's why each factor in the Eightfold Path has a word in front of it. It's not just a right intention, or it's not intention, it's right intention. It's not just speech, it's right speech. It's not clever speech, it's not accurate speech, it's right speech. It's right livelihood. It's not livelihood, it's right livelihood. It's not right, it's not effort, it's right effort. It's not mindfulness, it's right mindfulness. What happens in Abhidhamma is they try to define what mindfulness is. And then that's not the end of the story, though. It's the capacity to pay attention, but not to anything. It's attention which is subservient to the goal of this mission, to get you out of samsara. Just like the CIA is called the Central Intelligence Agency. Is intelligence kept there or something like that? No, what's its purpose? Oh, to deal with, enemies and so forth. It has a purpose, a defensive purpose. It's not just intelligence. Maybe Oxford University or Harvard is the place. If you want just general intelligence, go there. If you want specific intelligence about the connivings of your enemies, go to the CIA, although they get it wrong a lot. But if you want intelligence, Buddhist intelligence, then it's for a specific purpose. So this process of merely observing has to be always in the context of why are you observing and what is the overriding intention of your observation. The next thing is that there's a tendency to microscopic observation here, and we can't get too carried away. That's a sign that the left hemisphere of the brain is too over-involved, and we need to bring in the right hemisphere, which puts things in context. So it's not reductionism down to the subatomic level, which is very indicative of schools of Buddhism that get carried away into what I call atomic Buddhism. It's not atomic Buddhism. We got to stay at the human level as well, and it's a whole humanistic experience of how and why humans suffer. So we have to always bring that back. Schools get carried away sometimes. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Gary D. Can one be a Buddhist in good conscience and work for U.S. President-elect Donald Trump?
Well, yes, we're trapped in larger systems that we may not approve of. Should you pay taxes to a government that goes to war? Now, during the Vietnam War, we had some interesting situations. There was the Catholic Bishop of Seattle refused to pay taxes because it was being used by the government to go to war. And he was being a good Christian and Catholic, and he said, this war is not a just war, and I don't want my funds being used for it. So if that's if that was the right thing to do, then should all of us have done that, and should we refuse to pay taxes because some of it will be used for the war, etc.? So this has come up many times, and from a Buddhist point of view, we would say no. Well, you can do that if you want. That's a specific social action, a protest against something. But you are not actually guilty or karmically doing a negative act by paying taxes, because you're not directing the government, and you don't approve of the government's use of it for weapons or killing other people. And yet they will take some of that and use it. But that's their problem, not yours. So if somebody takes a piece of your fence and uses it to club somebody on the street, then you're not morally involved in that. Your paying of taxes is the support of the infrastructure, the roads and the buildings and the emergency services and so forth. And the fact that the government displaces some of that to things that you don't approve of can't possibly morally involve you. This is something that very good-hearted people often fall into. They become too concerned with the secondary or tertiary events, uses of their resources. Are they involved? You have to sort this out in terms of karma. So it's very important. This karma is not just a magical idea. It's an ethical understanding of what is your role in things and what is not your role, and what are you responsible for and what are you not ethically responsible for. Although you can take up any of these particular causes, if you prefer to vote for somebody else, or you refuse to participate in a system which you don't approve of, that's fine. That's fine. But you are not morally culpable or guilty if you are working in a system which is run by somebody who you don't approve of. So you should relax about that and understand that each person that makes intentional decisions has their own, will get their own results from their intentional decisions and actions, including the President of the United States, whoever that may be. Whatever intentional decisions and actions speech and actions that they initiate, they will get the results of that. They will have personal consequences for that. Okay, I think we have time for one more brief question, perhaps, or a brief answer.
The final question today is from Booney Boo on the live chat. I'm having challenges understanding the concepts of, quote, sacred and, quote, holy within the context of Buddhism. How can something transcendent be given a clear and distinct label?
Well, those are English words, sacred and holy. Holy is originally meant as it's just the old-fashioned spelling of whole, W-H-O-L-E. So a holy person is a healthy, complete person who is, and you're only said to be healthy and complete if you're a moral person, not stained with great sins or ignorant. So in a sense, in Buddhism, we all would say that the person has cleared up their ignorance, and so they are whole, complete, wholesome, and healthy. And the sacred is not something outside of that. The Buddha does say you can go to the shrines in the woods, you can go seek refuge in holy places and everything, still you will not find them there. You will only find it within your own mind. Your mind is holy. Those places may be so-called sacred, but you will not find a refuge in those places. You can only find a refuge in your wisdom, in your knowledge. Okay, well, that's about it for today. Next week, next week we'll be here. Yes, we will be here with a live stream.